All right, the final touches go up after you get the rest of the trim. That includes the electrical covers, and we're also going to clean up the parts of the trim that we cut that are not stained. So let's take a look at the final touches of redoing the trim in your house in this video. I've got these light switches. There's a junction box that needs to be accessible, and then a bunch of electrical sockets. I also have a cable. I also have a cable inlet, which I actually couldn't find one of these for, but it's pretty easy to just drill a hole and make your own. Just sort of use the old one as a template for where the hole goes. Yeah, then that just completes the look of the room with the finished wood, in my opinion. So I got these on Amazon. They're actually different wood. They're made of birch, and I've been using select pine for the trim, but I don't think it looks that different when it's all finished, and they're going to be relatively far away. This last step I think is completely up to you. Whether or not you think the wood is corny, or whether you think it adds, to the warmth of the room. At any rate, if you're getting painted, you might consider getting these to at least match the color of whatever your trim is. All right, and then here's one of the electric sockets and what it looks like. Again, I think it goes well with the overall look of everything. All right, and then the very last step, you've done a whole room. I mean, I guess you could do this outside the shop, but I kind of feel like when you're going with the cuts and everything, it's nice to leave this to the last, so that you'll have a few spots where just the ends aren't finished. So I like to come around and just stain these, and I'm just protecting the wall, but obviously, if you're careful, you may not need to put up the tape. But I like to go around just any of these little spots that are unfinished from where you make cuts. Just come back and add a little bit of just stain. In most cases, you'll be staining the end grain. So just for a reference, you can look this up. I'll put links in the description. I stained all this with Varathane's Provincial color, which is a relatively dark version, and I'm using their Early American to do the ends here, just a little pot of it. It's several shades lighter. Now, obviously, I figured this out in the garage, but it's several shades lighter, but when it goes on the end grain, it's quite a bit darker. It's just the end grains absorb so much more of the pigment than the rest of the wood. Go. Just going, people are not going to spend a lot of time looking at the sides of this. You're just trying to get get it to look good from across the room if anyone happens to notice. So with respect to choosing a lighter shade, I just wanted to show you, I obviously didn't do any kind of pre-stain on this, and also this has a couple coats of the poly on it, and this doesn't. But hopefully this gives you a sense for just how much lighter the Early American is compared to 2 coats of Provincial. And then for another point of comparison, right? So here's my little tested end grain. Where I brought you out into the sunshine just so you can see that it really is quite a good match, even though it's quite a few shades lighter. So keep this in mind when you're considering the end grains. Those little tiny pots of stain are really quite inexpensive. Good. So yeah, hopefully you can see it just looks a little bit cleaner. And the only other thing I should also say, I'm sure I've said this in my other videos, but I use a really fine tooth cutting blade. It claims to produce a 220 grit finish, and it really is quite a smooth finish. I doubt this video is capturing it, but it's really worth the investment if you're taking on a project like this to just have that fine edge and skip a sanding step so that this finish can come out the way you want it to. Another thing I suggest if you're a DIYer like me is to go into any of these joints. So this is just a joint for the crown molding. From a distance, I think this looks pretty good. I mean, I'm not great at this, right? So go ahead and leave comments about how bad I am. I promise you no one's harder on my work than I am, and I've never claimed to be an expert. But you can see that, these joints are not perfect. If you're a hack like me and you're not great at this, one thing you can do to kind of fix this up a little bit is just come when you're doing the trim on the edges of any edge cuts, just come and run your little tiny brush along this, and it'll just make it that much harder to spot from across the room. Just because, no room is straight, no room is perfectly square, right? And so I think this is one of the worst ones I did. It's sort of off by like 0.5 millimeter here. And, no room is square, especially in a 120-year-old house. And so, yeah, just gain yourself a little bit of coverage by coming through and covering that up. Okay, there it is. Just a little bit of touch up. I just used a little kind of 1/2-inch artist brush, come down, and then wipe off the excess with a rag. And, you can still kind of see, but it definitely, at least you don't see the like bare wood, right? Everything is at least the same color. So again, from across the room, this looks, I think, a lot cleaner than it did with just the little bits of exposed unstained wood. And finally, one last thing I'll say is that if you want, you can attempt to fill the holes from the finished nails. Got direct sunlight coming at these that I think makes them really visible. And I'm, 6 inches away. As I back up, and you're looking from 5 feet away now, I really don't think that these things are very visible. I mean, you can see them if you look, but the reality is like a lot of this kind of stuff just needs to, in my opinion, needs to kind of pass the 6-foot test, right? It's going to be relatively rare that anybody is standing and staring directly at the trim in your house. They're going to be looking at the television. They're going to be looking at other people having a conversation, reading a book, looking at their plate. They're not going to be sitting still, and staring up the frame of your door looking for nail holes. So go ahead and fill them if you want. I will show you down here there was a problem, and I just wasn't in the mood to make another piece, and it's in a corner where nobody's looking. And you can see that I attempted to fill it with a Varathane product that's supposed to match. And it just, to me, it sticks out worse than the nail holes do, the fill. So I'll leave that to your discussion. Go ahead and leave a comment. What do you think about the nail holes? They bother you? Would you prefer to fill them? Personally, I don't really think the nail holes need to be filled. All right, that's the last step. If you watched all these videos and you did this, your room is a beautiful new trim and you're all done. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.